Welcome back to Real Role Models, a space where I talk to inspiring and motivating people who have made remarkable changes not only in their lives, but the lives of other people. Today, I'm joined with somebody who has done incredible work in the mental health topic. Not only does she encourage it to be a topic of conversation, but she really has helped those who have struggled over years and years and years. So please welcome all the way from Canada, Zeinab Khawaja.
Thanks, Alex, for that lovely introduction.
How did you get into mental health and counseling?
That's a good question. I recently remembered that back when I was in high school, my dad did a random online 1-year course on becoming a counselor. Looking back, that was my first exposure to it. I often forget that happened, but it wasn't until I came to university here in Canada, and I volunteered with something called our peer support line, which was for students. It ran 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. Every night of the school year, including weekends. And yeah, we would just respond to students who were struggling. And the whole concept of peer support is not only being kind to others and being patient and empathetic towards others, but also being kind to yourself and being patient and empathetic towards yourself and sort of using those same beliefs that you put towards others towards yourself. And that was such a healing and awesome journey for me. And I remember just being trained in peer support and learning so much about myself. And I grew a lot from that. So it was just a completely random, I saw an advert for volunteers at the end of my first year. And I was really fortunate to get selected because back in first year, did I even know anything? And then, yeah, I just grew from that. And then I just realized how awesome it was and how life-changing it can be to just have someone listen to you and validate what you're going through, because it definitely changed my life. And then, yeah, I just sort of fell into job after job after that.
I absolutely love your journey because you have been there for so many people and you are changing lives internally, which is so important. I had this huge misconception about mental health. I thought that you only went to see a therapist if you were depressed. You only experienced anxiety attacks if you were categorized as this particular type of person. But growing up and it being more talked about, everybody goes through internal struggles.
Yeah, for sure.
And what other misconceptions are there in the world about mental health that you
So many. There's so many. One of the things that I hate hearing most in the world is when people say, oh, that person needs a therapist, as if it's a bad thing. And actually, we all could benefit from literally just having someone to talk to about our lives. That's pretty much all it is. So what you said, one of those things is therapy is a sign that you're broken or weak or that you can't handle your life. I'm no, therapy is a sign that you very intentionally want to make your life better. And improve it and make it easier and deal with, you want to face a struggle in your life head on and not avoid it. It's one of the bravest and most awesome things that a person can do. And it's changed my life in so many ways. Obviously, different people need different things out of therapy and there's different forms of therapy. But yeah, that's one of the biggest ones. And also sort of you were talking about how the difference between sort of mental illness versus just mental health challenges, which all of us experience. It is a really cool dual continuum model. Not to make this a lecture, but I have a lot of theory in my brain. There's a dual continuum model where on the x-axis you have having a mental illness or not having a mental illness. And then on the y-axis you have sort of flourishing and good mental well-being and poor mental well-being, or languishing is what the terms they use, I believe. And so you can have a mental illness and either be flourishing or languishing. And you could not have a mental illness and either be flourishing or languishing. People with a mental illness will need different levels of care sometimes. And it's important to recognize that and not just equate them. But recognizing that you could have a mental illness and be thriving, coping really well, being super resilient, living your life to the best and fullest and really enjoying yourself. And you can have no mental illness and also be doing that, or you can have no mental illness and you can be really struggling because of things that are going on, like a global pandemic, for example. Could be one of those things, right? Actually at work, we are often talking about how sort of the next wave of this pandemic, outside of the physical health concerns, obviously is just sort of a mental health pandemic, because everyone is impacted by it. But even if you sort of never had any mental illness or mental health concerns in the past, just knowing how many people are dying in the world, being separated from your family, your friends, or whoever your social networks are,
Yeah.
being physically distanced, lack of physical touch, all of these things can impact all of us. And, I think it's quite likely that if we're not being intentional about taking care of ourselves, and, even if we are, I think a lot of people will experience things like post-traumatic stress after this is all over. Like, we're experiencing it during, but after, I think there'll be a lot of sort of mental health needs across the world.
And what are some steps that people can take, or just things that they can do just to calm themselves down if somebody's going through anxiety at the moment?
It really depends on people individually, like what helps you feel present in this moment. What is an activity that, brings you joy, makes you feel connected, makes you feel grounded, and sort of keeps your mind in the present. A lot of people are going out in nature for walks or running or biking, which is great. Some people are reading a lot, journaling, picking up new skills. But also, I think for a lot of people, especially people with mental illnesses, if what you're doing is getting out of bed and eating meals every day, like if that's where your baseline is, I think that's also impressive. Sort of like some people are in survival mode, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't speak to anyone's character. It's not lesser. I think in society, especially because we're so productivity minded, one of the main things though for me, and I think most people, is trying to connect with people virtually, or in whatever way you can, standing 10 feet away or whatever it might be, because social connectivity is one of the biggest things. And I think often when we're in a bad place in our own mental well-being, the instinct is to isolate and to distance, and to sort of, for a lot of people, go in within yourself because we don't want to burden our friends, or we don't want to be negative, or all of these things. But I think it's really important to talk and reach out even more, as well as check in on our friends who might not be able to reach out, or in a place where they feel comfortable reaching out, and just talking to each other. How was your day? Even if it was just a really negative day and a really sad day, just sharing that.
You said so many incredible things, and I have so many questions that I just want to like blurt out.
Go for
I
it.
think one of them is, how important do you think it is for people to really use the resources at universities or at work, whether or not they're going through a mental illness?
If you take the time to like go through different sort of mental health services and therapists and people providers, and you eventually find one that's helpful for you, I think that can make a huge difference. It can help with grades, it can help with your friendships, it can help with relationships with family. So if you have the capacity and you feel like you might need help, ask for it, because you deserve it. And there's a lot of words that people will throw around that are very stigmatizing towards people who are seeking help and support. In my post-secondary, I've heard people use terms like hand holding or fragile, or like they want things handed to them and they don't know how to handle it. And all these terms are just so disheartening to hear.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going through a lot and people are saying these things about you, you'll believe that about yourself, and then your sense of self-worth will just be demolished, kind of thing. So if you are able to bring yourself to get through a door, it can be really, really good. But again, that being said, sometimes it's a matter of trying a few different mental health services and providers before you find one that really feels good for you and meets your needs, whatever they might be. The first step is usually talking to friends. And that's a huge step, right? Like, never mind talking to a therapist, never mind going into a hospital, never mind any of those things. Like, talking to anyone who has the capacity and is willing to listen, and trusting the people in your life, and take a bit of a risk, be vulnerable. Like, vulnerability is so scary. I think it's one of the scariest things in the world. But once you are able to lean into vulnerability, your life can just radically change. Suddenly you're telling people things that you feel shamed about, maybe, and they're just accepting you. And they're telling you you don't have to be ashamed. That was life-changing for me. High risk, high rewards. I went
Yeah.
off on a bit of a tangent. I don't even know
No,
if
I
I answered
love
the
it.
question.
You have so much experience in it, more than the average person, which is why, I love talking to you about these kind of things
Yeah.
as well, because it really, really does make you realize that when you do start talking about it and people do start accepting you and saying, that's absolutely normal, so many people go through this.
Yeah.
You start saying, okay, I am normal. That, like,
Yeah.
it's normal to be feeling this, instead of
Mm-hmm.
I'm abnormal. Why am I feeling this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like having gone through a lot of trauma in my life, right? I had a lot of responses and behaviors that were not quote unquote normal. But if you look at like, oh, these are the things that I've been through, it's understandable that I responded in certain ways. It's understandable that I felt certain things, that I wasn't able to do certain things, and that I did certain things, you know? And I think that's also an important lens. Like, what is normal? Like, what does that even mean, right? Is there such a thing? I don't think so. That word means very little to me. At this stage in my life, it's more just like understandable. Even if you don't understand your own behavior yet, like it is understandable if you dig deep enough. Like there are reasons that we are the way we are. So a lot of it's due to like our upbringing and like what we were exposed to as kids and how we saw our parents interact with each other and how our parents interacted with us and how other people in our lives from a young age interacted with us and what we saw. Like that is just such a big influence in these things. And like, yeah, it's just recognizing that and, oh, this is where this behavior comes from. I don't like it. Here's how I'd like to change it. And like, obviously that sounds very simple. It's not. It takes a lot of work and time, and it's a lifelong process. But I think when we get shrouded in shame of like, I'm a bad person because, or whatever, then it's even harder to grow, because sometimes we don't feel like we deserve to be happy. We don't feel like we deserve to get through things. We feel like there's an inherent flaw in us because we're a certain way. And that's just so heartbreaking to see in others, because I know that I was like that, and I know how much my life has changed when I've started to move away from that. So I love trying to spread these messages of like accepting yourself before anything else. It's about sort of like recognizing that we are worthy. I'm worthy, whether I am helping people or not, whether I can get out of bed or not. I am deserving of good things. It's radical acceptance is my jam these days. So that's what we're writing these days. We're trying, at least.
And we can't talk about mental health without touching upon social media.
Yeah, for sure. Certainly not for our age.
One thing that I love about you in particular is that you use social media to really promote reflection and to promote awareness.
Yeah.
I think it's so important to use that platform, because otherwise we're just drowned in comparisons,
Yeah,
and in FOMO. And how do you think people can look at social media and stay sane?
like most things, it varies from person to person. And so there's no, again, general rule. Like something that I've done personally that may or may not work for other people is I've curated my sort of Instagram feed and who I follow. So it's like my feed is literally like obviously like friends and family. And it's a lot of like mental health folks. So it's a lot of psychiatrists and therapists whose posts that I really respect and admire. It's a lot of people doing inner child work, which is something that I'm really into right now, and sort of recognizing the way your past sort of influences you now, as I alluded to earlier. And then I follow a lot of like dogs and animal things, and as well as like silly memes that I know aren't going to be like subtle undertones of racism. Like I'm very intentional about who I follow and what shows up on my feed. And if I see like a meme account that I'm following that's posting a bunch of racist stuff that's pissing me off, and it's like making me angry when I'm on Instagram, then I'll just unfollow them. Maybe I'll make a comment or two first, and then I'll unfollow them. You know, and it's just about being intentional about what you're curating on your feed and what you're exposing yourself to. Because that makes a huge difference, right? Like if you're, especially during this pandemic, I think we're already, a lot of people already use social media a lot, but like we might be using it even more now because there's fewer other things to do and fewer other ways to feel connected. But the thing about social media is a lot of the time, especially if you're just scrolling, it's a one-way connection. You're not getting anything back. And so making sure that you're also seeking out things that are interactive and that you're getting something back. Whether that's a call with a friend, or you're posting on your story and people are responding to you, or you're responding to other people's things. Like it's actually engaging and not just passively looking. But yeah, like if there's an account that you're noticing is really bumming you out, or it's making you feel bad about yourself, like question why you're following that. Maybe there's a valid reason. I don't want to judge. Like it's not your fault if you're following something that makes you feel bad. Like that's not your fault. But just being intentional and mindful about what we're exposing ourselves to and what we want to be exposed to, and then trying to take control of that as best we can is the most that we can do.
100%. And I love how you use the word expose, because we are exposing ourselves every day, if not most of the day, on these platforms. And whether we like to admit it or not, it is in a way brainwashing us with the way that we're thinking, but influences, you know, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about other people.
Yeah.
And I really think that by taking control in a way of, okay, who do I want to follow? What do I want to see every day? Who do I want to be influencing me?
Yeah, for sure. Like if you're following a bunch of celebrities who talk about diet culture all the time, you're going to feel like crap about your body probably. Whereas if you're following a bunch of body positivity accounts like I do, like it's just a reminder like, oh yeah, like I judge myself. I shouldn't. You know, it's just it's someone literally telling you like, hey, your body's okay. And you know, like that's just one example that I thought off the top of my head, right? Like it's like there's so many industries that make their money off of like us hating our bodies, and that's like weight loss industry, like makeup industry to some extent, and like the clothing industry. Like, all these industries sell the message that you're not good as you are, but you need what we've got to be good enough, or to be pretty enough, or to be whatever. And it's just such a terrible thing in which to be sort of embedded, and to some extent we can't really escape it, but at the very least you can choose to follow. Like Jamila Jamil, who's the actress from The Good Place, has like amazing stuff that she says about body positivity, and she's very open about her own sort of experiences and how it influenced her, and she, you know, really uplifts the voice of activists of all body types, because she's obviously a fairly like thin and conventionally attractive woman, and she recognizes that, which is so cool. So cool when people recognize that in themselves, and they're like, let me uplift the voice of like other people. So like that's like accounts that really like you agree with what they're saying and you want to hear what they're saying, and they make you feel good about yourself. Coming from a place of I'm inherently bad and I need to change and then I'll be good is really dangerous, and it really fills you with a lot of negativity. Like change is most sustainable and effective when it comes from a place of self-love and positivity. That's when it's sustainable. When it comes from a place of shame, anytime you have anything that triggers your shame, it just sort of like it can very easily fall apart. So I obviously I encourage exercise. All these things are really good for your physical and mental well-being. I just try to encourage people to come from a place of like self-love, like let me move my body gently because I love it and not because I hate it.
Or that you have to.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And going back to what you do on social media. So one thing that I loved was that you had this weekly Facebook post.
Yeah.
About encouraging people to reflect about what they're grateful for. Mm-hmm. Which I absolutely love, because it honestly does make me feel better when I do it. Every night I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. Yeah. And it's changed my life just doing those like simple things. So how did you start it? Why did you encourage it?
First of all, just to comment, like gratitude is such a huge thing. It can have a huge impact on your mental well-being and your mindset. That's not to say that you can't acknowledge that a lot of things might be really shitty and difficult. We don't have to discount the bad stuff to uplift the gratitude. It's good to balance both. So I just want to put that out there. But yeah, the post specifically. So I think it was like December 2018, I want to say, where like, you know, people are talking about New Year's resolutions and all these things. And like me, I think I just made a post about like, hey, please gush and brag about something you're proud of from 2018, from this past year, right? Like it's always about looking forward and like, what is the next year going to be? But I'm like, I'd rather at the end of the year look back than at the start of the year look forward. That's sort of my thing. And think about all the things that I did that I'm proud of and grateful for. So I just posted this on my Facebook status, and like a bunch of people responded. I think we don't often create a space where we can be proud of ourselves, because pride is a sin and you're arrogant and you can't be proud. Which is ridiculous. Like everyone should be proud of themselves. Arrogance isn't great, but there's a difference between arrogance and just being proud of yourself. I'm so proud of my growth and the things that I do, and I really want, like, everyone should be proud of themselves. I want that for everyone. So people were sharing all kinds of things. I don't remember them anymore because it's been a while now, but it was just such a nice thing. And so I remember in January just being like, oh, like people really like this, so like let me do it again. So it was like, what made you smile this past week, I think was my usual question, or what made you laugh. I think I changed up the question every week, but that was one of the most consistent ones. What made you laugh this week?
I loved it.
And I usually posted them on Wednesdays because it's a hump day and it's a hard one to get through especially if you're working 9 to 5. But it makes people think, like if they see it on their Facebook feed, and then they're like, oh yeah, like I smiled. Did I smile this week? Ooh, maybe I should do something about that. Or they reflect about something positive in their week, or I'll sometimes ask a question about like, what are you struggling with? And just reflecting in any sense about your life, I think is positive. And can lead to positive things. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I had some consistent folks who like commented more regularly than others. It was great. It was a good vibe, and I really enjoyed cultivating that. And I was really proud that I was able to sustain that to the end of like most of 2019, which was pretty cool.
You could really tell by the comments that it was the space that they needed, and it was that time that they had every Wednesdays to reflect.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful way to create that community and to create that necessary reflection. And I loved it.
Thank you. I loved it too.
And if you could leave us with one piece of advice, you've given us so much.
Have I? I don't even know. I was just rambling.
No, it's been amazing. But if you could leave us with one piece of advice or one thing that you just wish people would consider more, what would it be?
Be kind to yourself. Doing whatever you need to do to become your own best friend and to be kinder to yourself. And that is hard. People rebel against the very notion of that because they're like, oh, I don't deserve that. Like I have to work this hard to deserve kindness. When you're being kind to yourself, it becomes easier to be kind to others as well, right? And that makes just like the world a better place, right? Like when we are in pain, we're more likely to project pain into the world and do negative things. So just healing yourself heals your friends, heals your family, heals your ancestors, it heals your whole world. That's, again, getting very hippie-like of me right now. I'm getting more and more cheesy, but I do believe it. And so, yeah, being kind to yourself can change not only your life, but so many others.
You are seriously an inspiration for everybody, whether or not they go through mental illness, but just this whole reflecting and being kind to yourself, being your best friend, and sort of creating the environment that you need to grow.
Yeah.
It's so inspiring and so motivating. So thank you for chatting and highlighting that.
Yeah. Also, I will just, if we want to throw one more thing in at the end, just like Black Lives Matter, I just wanted to throw that out there while we're here.
100%.
In the world right now. Something that I saw recently was mental health work is also like anti-racist work. It's anti-oppressive work because, like, yes, it's important to be kind to yourself and work on these things, but like, it's also equally important to recognize what's going on in the world and be intentional about how we're complicit in that or how we're doing something about that. Because like, what is the good of me doing all this work in me within myself and like healing myself if like people are dying senselessly and there's nothing I can do about that kind of thing. So mental health work is also like just as important as it's to look inward. It's also important to look at the hurt in other places and be aware of that and sit with that discomfort of knowing what's going on and challenge ourselves to do something about that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
Thank you for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed the video as much as I did making it. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you know somebody who's inspirational, motivational in your life, or if you are that somebody and would like to share your story, please do reach out to me. Otherwise, keep on spreading the love and spread a smile a day.